All right, hello guys. Welcome back to the Highman podcast. Today is episode 14. Currently at 10:26 a.m. on Friday the 25th of November. It's starting to get late into the year now, so I hope everyone's getting ready for Christmas and getting all the presents they need. Yeah, Pete, do you want to kind of talk about what we're going to be discussing today?
Yeah, so basically just talking about how important is money in people's lives, how important is it to pursue money, like what priority should it be in people's lives, that type of thing. It can maybe even touch, I know in the last episode we touched upon talking about universal basic income and what kind of effects that would have. So maybe talking briefly about that as well. So yeah, a few different bullet points here to go through, but it should be good.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we could discuss, and it's something that you talk about to the end of the days. But yeah, should we get straight in? Do you want to give us a start?
I'll just start off posing a question to you, like just start off with like how big a priority, as a general question, how big a priority do you think people should put on making money as part of their lives?
It's difficult because when you don't have money, it's the most important thing in the world. But when you have a sustainable amount of money, you kind of take it for granted sometimes and think that like other things in life are a bit more important, like family time and stuff like that. So I think maybe it should always be prioritized up to the point that it makes you able to live a good life and helps improve the quality of life. But even that's like some people say like the more you get, the more happy you are. But I don't know. As long as you can meet your basic needs, and I think that's the minimum amount of money that you need to try and attain.
Yeah. So regardless of who you are, it needs to be a priority to get to the minimum amount. I guess it's got me thinking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As you move up those hierarchy of needs, the things at the top will make you the most fulfilled ultimately, but the things at the bottom are most essential. So at the bottom you have like food and shelter and hydration, that type of thing. And then one step above that is like safety and security. So both of those two kind of baseline essential things you need money for. So yeah, so it needs to be a priority at the bottom there, obviously. But I guess moving beyond that, so let's talk about people. If someone does have that minimum amount of money, but they're thinking about the direction of their life, what to prioritize, what to pursue, like should they prioritize making money more? Would that be a meaningful goal for them to have?
I think if you were to like tell people what the most important priority is, and you were to say it's money, I think that on a general basis that could be a good thing, because like the more money you have, it doesn't necessarily correlate with more freedom you have, but it seems like it gives you more options to do different things that you want in life. Like you can afford to do things that you enjoy. So if everyone in the world kind of attains to get a certain level of money so they can spend on what they enjoy, that'll be a good thing. But then like you always hear about the cases of people like working in like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, and they're getting all this cash every single year, but they're working like 100-hour weeks just for the sake of like 50 extra grand or whatever it is, and then burn out after a few years.
Yeah, so people, because a lot of people say the reason you work for money is so the money gets you freedom, but then so it's kind of paradoxical to sacrifice your freedom for the sake of money. But yeah, I think that is making money a priority and focusing on that a lot. Perhaps in the short term it would sacrifice you some freedom. So there's a tension between, is it worth making the sacrifice in the short term when it could provide you more freedom in the long term. But yeah, money in and of itself does open up different opportunities for you and allows you to perhaps live a more fruitful and rich life. Although, I mean, there's a whole nother debate about whether, you know, attaining external things is really what would make you happy and fulfilled. So that kind of brings me on to, like, perhaps having money as a goal is not, it's not that act of making, it's not the act of having money to buy external things that will give you fulfillment. It's kind of about having that goal. And I mean, in an idealistic sense, in the capitalist system, the goal is to provide value. You get money for the value you provide. So if the goal of attaining money turns into the goal of providing value to others, then I think that could be very fulfilling for people.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, because I remember I was in uni the other day, and some of the people in my class are like applying for grad jobs, and we were kind of discussing the different types of jobs you can get, and then one of them like ended up bringing up like Audi and stuff like that. And this guy said, "Oh, I don't really want to work for Audi. Even if you're store manager, you're kind of still stacking shelves, and it's a bit of a dead end job." And then like one of us was saying, "But like if you worked there for 3-4 years, you could save all this money and then have a like nice little pot to go pursue something else from. So you don't necessarily have to stick at it for the rest of your life. You could like you were saying, sacrifice a few years, save all this money, and then have the freedom to do more with it."
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up like working at Audi, because that relates to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well, because one of the ones higher up. So there's 5 levels. So the bottom one is food, shelter, that sort of thing. The next one up is safety and security. Then in the middle, it's relationships and social connection. Then one above that is status. And then at the top is self-actualization. So that would appeal to status, like telling people you work at Audi, that doesn't give you that status, which is inherently important to us. You can argue whether that's right or wrong, but it's kind of hardwired into us. So yeah, that's one factor. But certainly for people, you know, it could be a great idea to put their ego aside and take maybe a job that they feel is a bit below them, but to, you know, if it's working towards what they want in the future, then it could be a good thing for them.
Yeah, it's hard to know, like, but even if I don't know, like, say 3 to 4 years is not that long, but I guess it would depend on the job. Is it too long that the fact that job isn't fulfilling at all? Like, how long can a person last in that sort of job, if you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like if it's like you just sitting in front of a screen every day doing the same menial task all day, you could probably do that for a year or two, but you wouldn't be necessarily able to do that for 4 years. Whereas Audi, you might be able to do that for 4 years, or like the other way around, depends on the person. But is it worth kind of sacrificing those 2 years?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really just not in line with what you want and what you value, and you find no fulfillment in the work whatsoever, then you could argue that the means aren't worth the ends. And particularly, I mean, there's always multiple paths to get to a certain point. So you could make the money doing something else, but you know, maybe that's just a decision people need to make for themselves. But perhaps, you know, doing something just for the money of it, like that's akin to the idea of like selling your soul for the sake of money, because you're not doing what's in line with what you actually want to do, but yeah, I mean, that sounds bad, but you do it for a few years, you save up a sum of money, and then you can, if that gives you the ability to really push your life forward, then it probably would be worth it. Like at the end of those 4 years or whatever, if you achieved your goal of what you wanted to make in terms of money, I don't think, I think it's unlikely, especially after, I mean, if you did that for your entire life and then you look back on your deathbed and thought, then yeah, you probably regret it. But given like 4 years of doing it, you probably look back and think, you know, like the sacrifices was worth it, because I'm experiencing the delayed gratification now. So yeah, you're gonna say it's worth it. And that's how I try to view things more generally, not really to do with money, but sometimes I think, oh, will I regret missing out on certain opportunities to go out and have fun? Like this is my last year at uni. Will I look back in a year's time and think I didn't make the most of it because I'm choosing to delay gratification? I'm trying to make that decision more, and I think in a year's time I'll look back and thank myself for that sort of decision.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does come down to like delayed instant gratification. But I mean, one thing I'd say about like the delayed gratification, like when we talked about it the other week, in terms of like if you want to try and in your 20s pursue like completely developing your character to a point where you can kind of make your own business and sell it on later in life or make loads of money from it. The journey of pursuing that constantly for like 80 to 100 hours a week, or maybe like 70 to 80 hours a week, whatever it is, definitely a lot more than the average full-time job. Like when you're doing that, you are delaying your gratification completely for years in advance. But is there a chance that you like stop doing other things that aren't necessarily instant gratification, but give your life meaning and fulfillment? Like for example, like jiu-jitsu, if you're becoming an entrepreneur and you're working 80 hours a week, you realistically won't have like any time for jiu-jitsu apart from maybe like 1 day a week. You can do it in the day or the morning or the evening. Like, is it worth sacrificing these other avenues of like fulfillment and meaning just for the sake of financial freedom?
Probably not. It's a short answer. Maybe for a very select few people, they might be able to do that, and those will probably go on to achieve exceptional things. But to completely sacrifice everything else, yeah, it's probably not worth doing that for the sake of purely money. One could argue it might be worth doing it for 5 years, and then 5-10 years, and then the rest, you've got the rest of your life to live. But there are factors that go into that, and for me personally, like I'm not going to sacrifice doing jiu-jitsu to do to make it, even if it meant I could work 3 more hours a day and like make a lot more money,
double your earnings or whatever.
Yeah, like if because I was thinking about this once because I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, and he has like some like journaling exercises type thing. He like asks you a question and you have to reflect on it for yourself. And one of them was like, if you had unlimited money, like what would you spend your time doing? And then for me, one of the answers to that would be doing jiu-jitsu. But I can just do that every day now. Like I don't need to sacrifice the money. I don't need to sacrifice my doing that so I can make money so that I'm able to do that. It's kind of a weird thing. And in terms of this delayed gratification thing, like it's a mindset I try to instill into myself that delayed gratification is the right way to go. Because I think most of the time that helps me make better decisions, but you know, it's not when it comes to sacrificing things for purely money, because like when I delay gratification, I can choose to delay that gratification. Well, it's difficult because I enjoy doing jiu-jitsu, but I'd also consider that to be a delayed gratification type thing because it's a goal and I'm progressing, and it's good for my physical fitness and all of that. So yeah, it wouldn't be worth sacrificing for me. What do you reckon? I'm assuming you think a similar thing, that it wouldn't be worth sacrificing something that you enjoy for the sake of money.
yeah, I think to kind of dive into that question a bit deeper, it wouldn't be worth sacrificing something I enjoy for money unless in the near to distant future, in the medium future, and that sacrifice of the thing I enjoy now for money, like that would lead to something I would enjoy in the future. But if I sacrificed jiu-jitsu for 5 years and worked those hours online or something, that could bring me to a level of wealth where I could like own a yacht and go traveling around the world through like on the sea, and like that would be like unbelievable. But saying that, when you like talked about how jiu-jitsu is something you enjoy, but it still is a version of delayed gratification, I think that's why it becomes such a fulfilling sport and like a fulfilling avenue that people pursue in life. Whereas if I was just like on a yacht traveling around the world, like yeah, it'd be sick and I'd have a fucking great time, but is it going to be necessarily that fulfilling compared to like the grind of jiu-jitsu, which is enjoyable at the time you're doing it and like afterwards?
Yeah, there's this idea that like people have an idea that if they had loads of money, then that would make them happy, and we can have this kind of comes into the conversation about universal basic income, about how people think if they had their basic needs met, then they'd be satisfied. But you know, I don't think that's really how it works. But yeah, if you were able to make so much money that you'd maybe have more access to opportunities to train private sessions with the best coaches in the world. For example, if you focused on making money, there's definitely like one of the biggest things about making money. We talk about the opportunities of it. It's got a lot of potential to allow you to have a certain lifestyle. Like I just said there, you can get private sessions with the best jiu-jitsu coaches in the world. You can like if fitness was something really focused on, you could get a personal trainer and your own chef. You could go traveling around the world. You could go to UFC events in Vegas or whatever. Like you could have those sort of experiences. So yeah, that's what money can get you. But would it be worth sacrificing for like specifically jiu-jitsu? Like definitely no for me. But I guess you do kind of have to pick and choose your sacrifices. Like you can't do everything. You maybe just need to choose the things that are important to you. And for some people, like the sport, so to speak, that they enjoy would be like business and entrepreneurship, and perhaps that's something you can cultivate, and if you do that, then maybe you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like some people just love diving in. Like some people are like serial entrepreneurs. They'll set up a business, sell it to Google for millions, but they're like not satisfied, so they have to go set up another business, and that's the thing that they love and gives them fulfillment, which is a good thing to have as like your vice. But like one thing I'll ask you is like, when it comes to measuring what you like want from a job, like what are the measurements? Like in my mind, the first two that are obvious are like finance, like how much money you're going to earn, and then like work-life balance, and then maybe the third one would be the enjoyment of the actual job. Like what are the measurements you think there are that you should like put in a hierarchy of like what you prioritize top at the top?
Yeah, it's a good question for a job. I mean, the reason people have jobs is to make money, so perhaps you'd have to put that as the top priority. Work-life balance, yeah.
Not even necessarily like put them in order, but like what are the things that you think a job should buy?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I lagged a little bit.
Like not necessarily put them in order, but like what are the measurements when you're looking for a job that you should like look for? Like work-life balance being one, the money being another, the actual enjoyment you get out of the job. Like, is there anything else that you'd need to like have in this list of priorities.
Yeah, I guess you consider the greater impact of the work. That would maybe be the other key one there.
Mm.
How much value you're providing to other people, how important the work is you're doing, how big an impact it's having. I think that's definitely one of the things, because you said it as enjoyment of the job.
I think that could be slightly different to
it's slightly different,
because you can enjoy a job like working at a cafe, but it's not necessarily impacting the community in like a massive way. Although, like one could argue.
Yeah. It's a small. One could argue it's a small job, but if you do it well, it has a big impact.
Yeah, like you get an old woman that comes every week, and you give her some sort of enjoyment when she comes for her tea and coffee and like a slice of cake. Like still impacting the local community.
Yeah,
which is kind of sustainable than trying to impact the whole world.
Yeah. But so that question leads me into one of the other things I was thinking about, which is it's kind of just a different way of phrasing your question, a different angle to go from it. But so we talk about this higher man concept. So the higher man, what the podcast is named after, the idea from Nietzsche, that one should aim to that one's goals in life should be creative achievement and self-actualization. So take those two things. Is it better to pursue those two things instead of purely those two things instead of money? And just before you answer that, I want to say one thing about it that maybe you can respond to as well, is that I feel like there's a risk in saying I'm doing this for like self-actualization or creative achievement, like less kind of measurable things, is almost a bit of a cop out, because perhaps it's more difficult to actually make money. Like making money holds you more accountable because it's more of an objective thing. Whereas if you're focusing purely on like fulfillment of the job, then it's like, is that just an excuse to not make as much progress at making money because you've chosen more of an abstract thing that you can't really hold yourself accountable for?
Right. So for the first question, do I agree with Nietzsche's idea that the higher man should pursue creative achievement and self-actualization?
Yeah, is that more important than pursuing money?
Yeah, and then second to that, does that kind of lead to such an abstractness that you can't measure it and you won't necessarily advance in how much money you earn over time?
Yeah. Is it a bit of a cop out for maybe avoiding the difficult things that would be required to make you money?
Yeah. I think Nietzsche is probably right. I think if people, this answer would probably lead on to the UBI like chat, because if people's minimum needs are met, then I think doing creative achievement and self-actualization will just lead to a better life, because you'll feel so much more fulfilled. Like, I don't know if there's any case studies out there or anything from like different journals, but like it just seems like well known to the world that if you're doing something you enjoy, even if it is difficult, you will like have more meaning in your life, and that meaning is definitely worth more than money, because that meaning kind of lets you enjoy time more, and like that's the only thing that humans have as a resource, no matter what, is time.
That's the true answer.
Yeah, although it is like finite, time is the resource that every single person has available to them. Whereas money kind of comes and goes. And with that time, do you want to be spending money, or do you want to be enjoying it by being fulfilled? So I think that's what I would say about that, is that money should be secondary to those things. But following on from that, like people like Robert Greene, who he's got a few books out, one called Mastery, I think it is, and people like Stephen Pressfield, who talk about like the war of art. Like they think if you become a master and like just grind this thing every day and like discipline yourself, maybe not necessarily that you'll become like unbelievably wealthy, but you will create such good value in the world that you should be like rewarded for that inevitably. That's kind of like the gist I get from them. I haven't really like researched their books
Yeah.
out deeply. That's the gist I get from what they're trying to say. So the money will come as a byproduct of self-actualization and creative achievement, I think.
Yeah.
And then second to that, sorry, what was the following up question?
It was basically just, you see, I kind of think about this. It's basically how whether saying something like, yeah, I'm gonna, maybe not so directly related to the high man things, but basically saying, I'm not gonna do this difficult thing to make money because I want to do this thing that I enjoy more and makes me more fulfilled. Is that just a cop out for not doing a difficult thing? I feel like it can, it's difficult to be completely honest with yourself, and you can maybe rationalize not doing something difficult that would make you not pursuing a difficult path that would make you a lot of money because you say it wouldn't make you fulfilled, when in reality it's the hardship that you're trying to avoid.
Yeah. I think that's difficult for me to answer because I've not had a proper full-time job in a few years. But I've had part-time jobs when I'm back home for summer and Christmas, and then I had a part-time job like the last few months at uni. I did take a gap year and worked full-time at Toolstation, but it's difficult for me to answer because I feel like you kind of need to know the difference of like not a career job, but having a full-time job so you can actually sustain yourself for living. And I think, so should we in my mind, I'll use an example. Like, say a woman works at a cafe, and this cafe, like, they do in-house baking and like hot chocolates, milkshakes, and like they have kids come in, and these kids come in after school with their parents, and then they have people come in during the day and do like a bit of uni work or whatever. And this woman finds it quite an easy job. Obviously, she might be doing long hours, but she sees the job as quite easy because she gets to interact with friendly people all day. And she, as well as doing this job, like behind the scenes, she's completely qualified as an accountant and was an accountant for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But instead of pursuing that, she decided to go for the cafe. In my mind, that's kind of quite a righteous path to take, because it seems like that question that you asked, are people kind of using the creative achievement or like fulfillment instead of money as a way to cop out from the hard path? I don't know. Maybe that is true, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, if the hard path is accountancy and working for an accounting firm, and you're working X amount of hours a week, but it's kind of draining your soul and you're going to burn out eventually. That is a hard path, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right path.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people can cop out a little bit from the money and do these easier jobs. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but they should be pursuing something else that is voluntarily hard.
Yeah,
I think what the difference would be.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. And with that example, like the woman who's an accountant, it made me think the difference is the means worth the end? So for someone, we spoke about how someone might sacrifice a few years because they have this plan to make a certain amount of money, which opens up the opportunity that they want in the future. But if you're just an accountant working away to have marginally better quality of life, because you make more money, even though you can have a job that you enjoy more, and your needs are met by doing that job, then yeah, that's probably the right decision. But I guess it depends on whether, like I said, the means justify the ends.
Yeah. I mean, what would you say to someone that says, like someone I know, they said that in the future when they're older they will be rich, and like no matter what, it's a quite an admirable characteristic. Like, they've got this self-belief and self-drive that no matter what avenue they take in life, they will be rich. And like he said to me, all he wants is money when he's older. Obviously, I think that would change over time. But like, do you think that is a bad thing?
No, I don't think that's a bad thing. I say go get that money. But yeah, so because okay, so this is what brought me onto the question of like fulfillment versus like pursuing money. I was thinking like about whether it's the easier path, because when I think about my own future, I feel like I ask myself the question, there's difficult things. I feel like that there's paths which would be more difficult. For example, start my own business that has far more potential to make me money than alternative paths. And then a part of me tells me, oh, I might not be that path might not be fulfilling for me. But that's a cop out to avoid it could be a cop out to avoid the difficult work, which
Right.
ultimately would be more rewarding. So to have that goal of making money, I think it's a good one, and you avoid the danger of copping out to say, oh, I wouldn't be fulfilled doing that anyway.
Right.
It's more of just a cope. I guess it's the danger is you use it to rationalize. You use fulfillment to rationalize why you didn't do what you really wanted to do. You didn't get to the point you really wanted to get to. But obviously, in that example of the accountant, that doesn't apply because she wasn't working towards a point she wanted to get to because the money wasn't important to her.
Right. That people use this rationalization of fulfillment to take the easier path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an idea. Maybe applies to some people. I've thought it kind of for myself, thinking about future paths. So thought bring it up.
What's the most important thing for you when it comes to a job? What would be your highest priority, or like maybe like two of them?
Probably money and impact on the world. I think you can argue about enjoyment, but like enjoyment and fulfillment might not be exactly the same thing. And I think fulfillment more so comes through the impacts you have. And I believe that having money, that it gives you a lot of opportunities which probably are worth the sacrifices. Having said that, I wouldn't sacrifice doing jiu-jitsu and going to the gym and that type of thing for money specifically.
Do you think that I've got an example in my head actually? Like, I think I agree with you that enjoyment and fulfillment are quite different. Like, you might have a job that you maybe not that you necessarily hate, but you don't get any enjoyment from it. But the impact it has on the world and the community around you give you a real sense of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is amazing because it gives you this instant burst of like happiness, whereas fulfillment, obviously, it seems to be a longer lasting sense of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And one person that kind of springs to mind when it comes to that, obviously I don't know them personally, it would be like Elon Musk. Like, I've heard like him in interviews and stuff, and like he kind of lives like a bit of a hell when he's just working all this time. He's sleeping at his offices in his various businesses. He's not necessarily enjoying his job, but like he seems to get a true sense of fulfillment from trying to connect the whole world on a Wi-Fi, so we can get like different people around the world the opportunity to create their own businesses and help their own local communities. Or SpaceX when he's trying to colonize Mars and all this shit, terraform it. Like, he seems to get a lot of fulfillment out of what he does, but maybe not necessarily enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so perhaps something that needs to be considered is people's personalities, because I don't think Elon Musk really has a choice about whether I don't think if he decided I'd rather just he doesn't get to make the decision that I'd rather just go and relax and enjoy myself, because if he did that, he'd be tortured by the lost potential, because that's the way he's wired. He wouldn't be able to enjoy himself. So there's certainly an element of personality which goes into those sort of decisions. And perhaps it's important for people to make decisions which are more aligned with their personality. And if they're not conscientious, for example, then working hard and a sense of achievement probably aren't that important to them. So they could have a more fulfilling life pursuing other things. But would that be a more meaningful life? Like, would it be worth them sacrificing somewhat the fulfillment or enjoyment in their own life for the sake of having a positive impact on other people? It's an ethical question, but I guess for the individual it wouldn't be. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think when you reference like what type of personality you have, I think that definitely would be a big indicator of the type of job you have. But also like the type of job you could even achieve. Like one of the modules at the moment in university is called Leadership in Practice. We're going to learn about leadership qualities, different theories about where leadership comes from. But the whole point of the unit is to create a portfolio of my leadership, different theories from the literature, and then have like a dream employer in mind and like reference them, like an actual employer like BMW, for example. And like our unit leader is basically saying this portfolio allows you to understand who you are by doing like the Big Five personality test or like these different measurements of leadership tests. And he was saying like one of the biggest indicators for success in a job is conscientiousness and agreeableness or disagreeableness, I think, and extroversion and conscientiousness, I think. If you're not necessarily an extroverted person, you're more introverted, and you're not very conscientious, it doesn't seem like you'll necessarily be able to achieve just on like your own accord like a high management position or leadership role and be successful in it.
Yeah.
Not to say that people can't train, like this is where like the literature comes into play. Like some people think it's kind of innate, the leadership qualities that people have, and others believe it can be learned and taught. But it's interesting just to talk about how some leaders are born naturally as leaders, and others have to like learn that. And personality traits are big indicators for the type of position you'll be able to achieve. I don't know, that kind of makes you think about like when we talked about Nietzsche and the higher man concept and slave morality v master morality. Like, I think we referenced the question, like, is it possible for all people to become master moralists and like lead by example and like have the whole world be overachieving almost? And I kind of thought yes and no, and then I thought no because of like simple distribution on a curve would say that some people have to be at the bottom, some people have to be at the top, and most people will be in the middle. And then that kind of like is what, and like the idea that your personality traits indicate what sort of success you'd have in life and your job makes you think about that as well. It seems kind of natural that some people will just be doing pretty standard jobs, some people will be doing amazing jobs, and then some people won't necessarily have jobs.
Yeah. We've spoke about this a couple of things before, a couple of times before, and it's interesting to think about how personality plays into it. The thing I've said about it, which I'd like to believe, is that everyone has the capacity to, but not everyone will. So the reason the distribution, you mentioned how the distribution, there'll be some people at the top and some people at the bottom. It's not because those people at the bottom aren't capable of doing it, but it's because it's difficult, and probability would have it that a certain amount of people aren't able to, aren't willing to, don't decide to make the difficult decisions and to do the difficult things that would get them there. But there's certainly an element of personality, and not just personality, like IQ as well, other factors about their background that, you know, obviously people in some when we're talking about success and making money and being a in a managerial position, someone in some third world country, third world war-torn country, you know, then not that those people can't strive for the good and try to be good morally and strive for greatness in their own respect. But I guess when we talk about careers and things, that's not really a factor for them. But I think for most people in the Western world, in these rich privileged countries like our one, you know, I'd like to think everyone does have the capacity to, but some people might not choose to go, for example, for a leadership position, because that's not really, they just don't, it's not part of their values. But yeah, any more thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, like, I think you're right in saying that everybody has the ability to. It's just that a certain portion of the population will choose not to pursue that like difficult journey. I think you are right in saying that everybody has the ability to, but it would seem just by like the laws of nature that everybody's ability would be slightly different. So for some people, it will be easier to pursue that journey, whereas for others, it will be harder. I don't know if that necessarily has an influence on the probability that someone would pursue the difficult journey. Like, if it was an easier thing to do, would that make it higher? Would that make it a higher probability for an individual to do it?
Yeah,
even if it was still.
Yeah, I mean, there is I guess you could call it a natural selection type of thing. This is how we evolved. Certain people are more, certain creatures were more fit for survival, and they carried on. And you can talk all you want. You can say, so maybe the ones that didn't make it through should have put in more effort, but I think effort works on an individual level, though. Like, if you put the effort in, you'll be the best version that you can be, and your life will be the best that it can be for yourself. But on a larger scale, like, yeah, obviously there's more capable people who, regardless of how hard someone less capable of them works, they won't be able to live up to what this other person can achieve. But on an individual level, everyone would be better off, you know, doing the good type of things that we talk about.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So if we're ready to move on, there's one of the things. So we talk about sacrificing, like hobbies. Like, would it be worth sacrificing your hobbies? But one of the most important things, I think, is perhaps sacrificing pursuing relationships, be that friendships or intimate relationships. And I was thinking about this, and I think it's definitely different for men and women to some degree. And I'll talk about why I think that is. So one factor is that men making more money it's been shown in many studies that women date up and across like the socio-economic hierarchy.
Hypergamy.
Sorry, hypergamy. Yeah. So making more money increases sexual opportunities for men, and on the other hand, for women, it doesn't. It's not a factor. There's no correlation between how men select for women. And on that note, you know, for women, making more money, not to say that they shouldn't try and do it if that's a goal of theirs, but it maybe even limits the opportunities they have because they're standard, because they want someone with more money, broadly speaking. But the amount of people with more money goes down, so their standards go up, and so yeah, that's one factor. And the other factor is that there's a time limit on when they can have children. So if a man decides to just focus on career, making money, and they get to 40 years old and they decide they want to have kids in a family, it's not a problem for most men. Whereas if a woman does that, well, she can't have children. She can choose to adopt, but you know,
makes it more
different. Yeah,
there's an expiry date almost on a woman's reproductive organs. So it definitely has a higher pressure earlier on in their life. I mean, it's a bit of a sad reality for them, to be fair. Like, it's a sad reality in the respects that they have to kind of think about it earlier in life, and they have to keep that thought and prioritize it, whereas men kind of have the freedom of pushing that on until later in life. But also the sense of joy and fulfillment you get from having a family is kind of immeasurable to the amount of money you make.
Mm-hmm.
So pursuing a career for a woman is a good thing because it gives them fulfillment, but
it would never be able to match the fulfillment of a family realistically for the vast majority of people, particularly women.
Yeah, I heard Jordan Peterson was on Chris Williamson's Wonder Wisdom podcast, and they were talking about, I think it was them, they were talking about
it was
how now there's more women over the age of 30 that aren't married with kids or that don't have children than ever before. And it's over, I don't know if it's over 50% or something.
Yeah, it was. The point was that it's now over 50% for the first time in history.
Yeah, which is just crazy. And I don't know if it's because if it is because women want to pursue a career and want to prioritize that over having kids, or if some sort of social program has come on and it's made women believe they need to have a career to have some sense of fulfillment, and that kids are under this burden that will just bring them down and take away their joy from other things in life. I don't know which one does it influence the other, but it seems that women just have this idea that children are just little devils that are just going to fucking suck all the joy out of their life. And I think they're right in some respects. You're going to reduce your freedom to go out and do shit, but like you were saying, the amount of joy you can get from fucking just having your kids around is pretty immeasurable.
Yeah, it's likely for most people going to be out being, having a career. So yeah, I think that's just in general, I thought it's an important point because, the decision process needs to be different between men and women. There's different considerations that need to be made. Any more? Go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Is there anything that the world could do to almost make that decision making happen earlier for men as well? Would there be anything? First of all, would there be anything the world could do to kind of put that priority at the highest level, like it is for men? So they have to think about it earlier and have to make these decisions faster. And then B, what impact would that have?
Is there anything that can be done?
Priority that women have on children, put that onto men. So we think about it earlier rather than 40, 50. We have to think about it by the time we're 30, who's our partner going to be? Are we going to be able to have children with this person? And then what sort of impact would that have on the world?
I think the answer is yes, but I do think it's actually is kind of the case that it's culturally enforced. Most people, men and women, have kids around 30 or whatever the average is. Men are usually a couple years older, but it's not a massive difference. It's not as if the majority of men are waiting until they're 40, 50. But a part of me does feel that it is a better strategy for men to wait later because they can get themselves better set up financially and the rest of their lives, and there's not that time limit there. Especially, I think their fertility can go down over time, but I think that goes away if they're in good health. So if you take care of your health, that shouldn't be a problem anyway. So I think, so you asked me if that would be a good thing or not. Certainly individually for men as well, I think it puts more pressure on them when it's not really necessary. And I think as an individual for men, it could probably be a better decision to wait a bit longer.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it could be a bad thing based on what you just said, how the fact that on average men are a few years older, those few years give the man an opportunity to set himself up a bit more financially, get himself more well put together, And like, unfortunately, women might not necessarily want to hear this, but like, if one person has the opportunity in a relationship to better themselves by a few years, it benefits the whole relationship as like overall. And just by nature of biology, that will be the man, because we don't have to fucking hold the baby for 9 months.
Yeah.
So like, it's better that at least one individual in that relationship can have the extra few years to develop themselves. And like, just by what the world we live in, that is what women have to sacrifice, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a bad thing maybe if men had to do it at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I think there's a reason it's the way it is, and it works. And on an individual level, for men, it's a better strategy. And like, you can argue, oh, it's it's worse for women that they're not able to do that. But you could also say it's good for them that they don't really have to do that. We spoke about how for men, like, men aren't going to choose a woman based on how much money she makes. Like, just the evidence for that. Like, it's not a decision, doesn't impact the decision for men, whereas it does for women. So if a man wants to maximize his options, he needs to do that, whereas a woman doesn't. But yeah, you can argue which is better or worse. I wouldn't say either side is better or worse, just different, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Any other points you want to talk about?
No, I think that's all for me. I mean, one of the later points I had on there was about universal basic income, and about we kind of touched on in the last episode about how that affects fulfillment. But we spoke about it in a bit in this episode. I don't know if there's any more we want to elaborate on that.
I don't know. One thing I kind of thought about earlier when we referenced it is like, universal basic income in my mind initially makes perfect sense. Like, giving people the option to have more freedom to pursue different things in life that can give them a better life is good. But when I kind of think about it in my mind, it seems like the whole world already has universal basic income compared to what it was before. Like, we took it yesterday or a few days ago or last week. Like, the world is so much more developed nowadays because of capitalism. It's like minimum standard has improved so much. And you could argue that's what the universal basic income should be. And as long as we're progressing that on average over time, I don't necessarily think it is like a good thing to have universal basic income.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, I've heard, can't remember exactly who I've heard talk about it, but so the argument is it will be required once robots and AI are able to do a lot of the jobs that humans currently do. It will remove a large portion of jobs. But a point I heard someone made was this has already happened through the Industrial Revolution, for example. A massive amount of jobs were lost, but it's not as if but the response to that isn't that there's just no jobs. It's that more jobs are created, different jobs, different types of jobs, which just different jobs that they're created, perhaps more focused on creative type of things, not administrative or something. I mean, something that an AI robot could do. So it'll be interesting to see as time plays out whether it will actually be a problem or whether the jobs will just change as it did in the from the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, I mean, we might even get to a point where like robots end up taking over these jobs, such to a point that we actually just destroy all the robots or a large proportion of them to give jobs back to humans.
Or they destroy us.
Yeah. That could happen.
Yeah, but it is interesting because when I think about, okay, well, perhaps more creative jobs come, but I feel like there is perhaps a limit. I'm not sure about this point, but I'll put it out there that there maybe is a limited amount of value, a limited amount of essential things that are able to make money. So once if, for example, robots completely take care of the food supply. They completely take care of manufacturing. They completely take care of building things, of maintaining things. Like where is the value to be provided by humans? Obviously there'll always be a place for creative type endeavors, but those tend to follow a Pareto distribution in terms of the amount of money people are able to make from them. So whether creative jobs will really fill the hole taken away by these essential jobs, we don't know.
Yeah. Like me and my housemate were talking the other day, like we were talking about like making business inventions and like these new things that will make us loads of money. We were like kind of thinking like it seems like everything in the world has already been done. Like there's so little room in my mind for new things that can just make you $1 billion. Obviously, I think there's still a lot of options out there, but it seems like that pool of unfound success is slowly shrinking. But the problem is, because we don't know how big that pool is, we just can't say it is shrinking or it's getting bigger or what.
Yeah, I'd like to think that it's not shrinking. It's just, I mean, it does seem like everything. I mean, it probably seems like that at all points of history, that everything could probably be done, but it just takes a certain level of creativity. I think in terms of starting a business as well, it's not about creating the most new, innovative thing. It's probably about doing something that other people are already doing, but doing it better. So yeah, that's maybe something to consider as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, the unknown. Just never know it, will you?
Oh, it's great chaos, but also great potential. So got to see both sides of it.
Yeah, it's very true.
And on that note, should we wrap it up?
Yeah. I guess one last thing is, like, we didn't really touch on it, but I guess we did. Like, you don't really need money to have too much fun in life, I don't think.
No.
Like, it's a good thing to attain, but there's a lot of things you can do for free as long as you're doing with people that you love and fucking enjoy spending time with.
Yeah.
But like, just enjoy the little things in life. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture, but don't lose sight of the things right in front of you either.
Mm. I think, yeah, that's a good point. Don't get obsessed about the number in your bank account, because you know it's not even real in a way. But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, guys. It's currently 11:24 a.m. About an hour exactly, I think, that around about something like that. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Go like and subscribe on YouTube. We are on Spotify as well, so please check us out. We probably will be the next biggest podcast ever in about 2 weeks, maybe like 20 years, but we'll see.
Give it a bit of time, maybe more than 2 weeks, but
3, 4 maybe. Who knows? All right then. Well, enjoy your day, Pete. We'll see you soon.
Oh yeah, and also we're going to try and do 2 episodes a week now. I'm not sure. I don't think I mentioned that last time, but yeah, aiming for 2. So
yeah, maybe like one short one longer one. Just get the output increased.
Yeah,
get the conversation going. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Sweet.
See you in a bit.
Bye.